Welcome to the second video in the Part 1 training of a disaster response call center specialist. This portion will focus on aviation disasters. In 1996, the Aviation Disaster Family Assistance Act was passed, and this was the result of family members who had been previously involved in aviation accidents who felt that they were treated unfair by airlines and not being provided information in a timely manner, and just things weren't handled very well for those family members. So they came together and helped get this new legislation passed. The National Transportation Safety Board has since coordinated with the airlines to help ensure that this legislation is being upheld. Here are some of those support tasks that airlines provide for the victims and the victims' families. The toll-free number, it is something that needs to be publicized and be a number that people can call to get information when they hear of an aviation disaster. And that information needs to be provided to family members as it becomes known. So we like to say that we are able to continuously provide those updates to family members and provide notifications as they become known to us. There's also a Family Assistance Center, the FAC, that is set up at the accident city and usually in a hotel, and airlines are responsible for helping family members travel there, providing transportation, lodging, meals, and also for those who cannot or wish not to travel to that Family Assistance Center, there still needs to be a line of communication to ensure that family members are getting updates. Also, part of the support tasks are that we would provide information to medical and dental offices to help them understand the urgency and the need for these records to quickly get to the Family Assistance Center to assist the authorities at the scene during an aviation disaster. The legislation itself does not define family. It encourages airlines to allow family members to define family. And by doing this, it helps family members to have a say in who they want to have with them at that Family Assistance Center. Who are the family members that they would like to be there? When it comes to the notification process that we do in the Disaster Response Call Center, we do have an inclusive definition that we use for notification purposes. So it's important that when we provide any type of information over the phone, that we are speaking to a family member. And that definition is inclusive. It's a relationship based on blood, legal proceedings, or a relationship of emotional significance. So, of course, your immediate family, but also an ex-spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend. It could be a same-gendered partner. It's a very inclusive definition. That definition of family for notification purposes does not include friends, coworkers, neighbors, roommates, etc. And then in regard to legal next of kin, airlines will determine this. It is assumed someone's spouse is the legal next of kin, but other than that, airlines will work to determine legal next of kin. This is important mostly in regard to legal and financial matters. Airlines, they do typically pay out a prospective payment of $25,000 after an aviation accident. And this is more of a goodwill gesture. It's something airlines do to help that family during this difficult time when they will most likely have to take time away from work and travel to the Family Assistance Center and go through this difficult process. Also, by accepting that payment, family members are not prevented from suing the airline. So this next portion will now focus on actually how we process those calls coming in on that toll-free number. This is just an overview of what we'll be covering. So that first piece is logging into our database. DIMS. DIMS is the Disaster Information Systems. It is our database that we created, and it is located at the website dms.neas.com. Now, in part one of the video training, we did cover how to log in to DIMS. This would be that first step as a specialist or in our network that you would do. And by logging into our database, you'll be able to get some information about whatever the event is that's happened. So this activation will have an event created that you'll be able to look up under the Client Management tab, which will be on the left, and that first option will be the Event Incident Info tab. So that will give you a lot of information about this aviation disaster. Keep in mind when you log in, you do have your own unique username and password. You have a 4-digit PIN that you use to make your password unique to you. And of course, your first initial followed by your full last name, all lowercase, is also unique to you. Once you do log in and see the event, you'll be able to see not only who the company is that will be representing on the phone, but you'll see that toll-free number that's been released to the public. You can print this page. It can be helpful for you to have while you're working. We always use Blue Sky Airlines Flight 999 for all of our training purposes and for our best practice sessions for continued education. So we have scripting in our database. The scripting will help prompt you to take a call and gather the information that you need before you can provide a notification. You'll notice in the greeting that we do not say hello or good afternoon or good morning. We want to try to not sound too upbeat and too perky. So we have found that just by answering the phone and stating who we are, the Blue Sky Flight 999 Family Information Center, that it helps keep that sound in your voice. Also, you would answer with only your first name. And then because this event or this incident has two events, you'll notice that the greeting says, who do you believe may be on board or possibly affected at the Galleria Mall? For this scenario that we use for training purposes, Blue Sky Airlines was departing from Seattle and it was headed for Chicago O'Hare and it crashed into a mall. So not only did the airline itself crash and be involved in an accident, but it also impacted that Galleria Mall. So that's why there's two events. For this portion of the training, we'll focus only on this aviation portion. So who are the people that call the toll-free number? Well, the toll-free number will be public and it will be on the news and it will be out on social media, so people will call if they have any inkling that they might know someone on board that flight. So it's important to keep in mind that there will be a very high phone volume that first day. That first day, lots of calls are coming in and people are just curious. Maybe someone they know was on board that exact flight. And people will tell you things like, I'm worried about my brother. I think he's maybe on this flight that crashed, or I heard about this accident and my mother travels a lot for her job and she's not answering her phone. I think maybe she's on this flight. Can you please check for me? So there's definitely going to be a lot of phone calls that first day and within those first few hours. Data shows that 98% of all the calls you take during an aviation accident will actually be inquiries from those whose loved one is not on board. So you'll be providing a lot of notifications for people whose loved one actually never boarded that plane, that flight 999. When you provide that type of notification, you are able to give that to any caller. So this person could be family based on our notification of informing family members. They could fit that definition of family, or they could actually be the friend or the coworker or the boss, because if the person's not on board, we can tell that to anyone who calls. It's only when the person's name is on board that reservation list or that confirmed list that then we need to ensure we're speaking with family members before doing any notifications. Okay? But in this scenario, those types of calls, you'll be able to give that news to anyone. So again, we need to always collect information first before we give any type of notifications or information. And the scripting will provide you with all of the questions and information that you need to gather first before providing that notification. So on the left, when you log into our database, you'll see the tab Client Management, and you'll see the option called Manage Client List Scripting. This is where you would click to start taking calls during an activation. This will provide you with that greeting of how to answer the phone and then take you through the options of the different types of calls that you'll be receiving. And again, only give information and provide notifications to callers that meet that definition of family. So there are a few different types of calls that are common for aviation disasters and types of calls that you'll receive. We are going to go through those today. Also, there are a few different scenarios for what types of notifications we can give. The first being a preliminary passenger list. And a preliminary passenger list is anyone who at some point booked a flight or held a reservation on a certain flight. Now, the notification that you would provide would be different because we would know that person held a reservation at one point, but we don't know yet if they actually boarded that plane. It isn't until we get that confirmed passenger list that the airlines have gone through boarding documents and we know now who boarded the plane. And that's our confirmed passenger list. And then the next type of notification that we will be providing is that passenger status, that physical status of our passengers. So as we get that information from the airline and the authorities at the scene, we of course update the database so that information is available for you real time. So now let's go through a few different scenarios. You would of course be in our activation event and incident, whichever one is happening, and you would be able to greet the caller by answering with, "You have reached the Blue Sky Airlines Family Information Line for flight number 999. My name is Amy. Could you please provide the last name of the person you believe may have been on board or possibly affected at the mall?" Now, to process the call, you have a few different options. The first option is caller does not provide a name. By choosing this radio button, you click it with your mouse, you'll see the different types of information that you're able to provide. One would be is someone's calling and they're from the media. They were trying to bypass the media relations number and get to a live person. So they've reached you, and at this point, you'll be able to share with them that direct number for them to call to get to the media relations number. Same with reservation agents. You are not a reservation agent. You will not be assisting in canceling anyone's flight or changing anyone's flight who maybe no longer wants to fly on this affected carrier. So you'll be redirecting them to that phone number for reservations, and it would be listed here for you. Some people maybe just want some more information. You can provide them with the website. And then, of course, unfortunately, there are those prank phone calls that come through. And we do want to explain to those callers that, if they do not provide us with the name of someone they're concerned about, then we're going to need to hang up and clear the line, because this phone number was established to assist people who possibly may know someone who's been affected by the incident. So it gives you some verbiage that you're able to say to that caller, and then you'll always have the option to end the call after you give that notification or provide that information. The next is when the caller provides a name that's not on the list. And this is the majority of the calls that you'll be taking. And this is that news that you're able to share with any caller. And you would first read your greeting, and then when the caller provides you with the name, you'll choose the option caller provides one or more names, and the scripting is going to tell you what you need to ask for first. And it says, could you please spell the last name for me? And you can see here the last name is Johnson, and then spelling of the first name, Ann. And then you're going to also be asking which country does that passenger reside in. This is information that's requested by the Department of State. And so we do need to ask that question just in case at any point someone did need to travel to the Family Assistance Center and maybe they didn't have a passport. This will help us assist in make sure that person's able to travel. And that's information that we'll have collected, and we of course here, the management here, can work to get that information and interface with the Department of State. So what I want to show you about doing the search is a best practice. We always search our database by using the initials. So instead of actually writing Johnson to start your search and writing Ann to start your search, you'll notice that to rule out getting this false negative, we want to enter only those first initials. And so we put the J, and then we put the A, and then we can choose the country and do a search. And this is an example here of what would come up. These are all the passengers who have the initials A and last name J. So this helps us ensure that we're looking over and not missing anything or seeing a misspelling. We're looking exactly at those two initials and any possible scenario of who could be on board with those initials. And if you do not see that name, you always want to ask about other spellings of the name, other possible names the person goes by, nicknames, a maiden name, a hyphenated name, maybe their middle name. And once you verify that you have the spelling correct and you've done everything you can to ensure there's no other possible names, then you can go ahead and type Johnson, type Ann, do the search again, and then you'll be able to provide your notification to let the caller know that the passenger with that name did not hold a reservation or did not board flight number 999. Now, sometimes the caller might become insistent. There's that happens where people sometimes think that based on an email they have, or maybe they wrote down that flight number, they often will think, no, I know that Anne is on this flight, and they're very insistent. So if that happens, what we do is we offer a little explanation, just ensuring the caller that it is possible that Anne could have gotten onto another flight, and just try to explain that, and then let them know that they should just keep trying to reach her. And if it's a few hours later and still they have not heard from Anne, at that point they can call you back. So we don't offer to call them. We ask that they call us back, and we give the phone number once again with the extension. So the scripting will also guide you through those types of scenarios. Now, the next type of call will be when the caller provides you a name and you choose that option, and the name shows up. You know that the name is there and it matches exactly that spelling that they provided you, but the person you're speaking to is not family. So the first thing you'll notice is here we've entered, first we would have started by putting A and J and searching with which country Janet Ames resides in, and then once we saw her name show up, you're actually able to just click the name to open up that profile. So anytime you see that blue text, it's hyperlinked, so you can click it and it will open right to the profile. Now, when you click someone's name, you're working now in their record. So that person was on board flight number 999. We have a confirmed flight list, so we know who boarded that plane. And the first thing that's going to happen is the scripting is going to ensure that you know it's asking you, the agent, a few questions. First, it's going to ask you to enter in your name. The next thing it wants to know is what is the caller's primary language. So if you're speaking in English, it's always going to default to English. But if for any reason you needed an interpreter on the line, then you would change that language to that language that you're speaking with that person. And then, of course, you have a unique extension when you're in our network, so you'll enter in that extension here. Then the next portion is collecting the caller's information. So this is really important. This is where we're finding out who the caller is and how they're related, what is their relationship to this passenger, and how would we reach this caller if needed. So it'll prompt you and ask you to ask the questions we need, and then always asking for spelling. Also, it's going to ask you when you gather a phone number and what type of phone it is, it's going to ask you to repeat those back so that we ensure we got a good number for this caller. Finally, you'll notice that the scripting changes and starts talking about the person you are concerned about. So we're asking a few questions here about that passenger, that person's loved one or family member, the person that they are concerned about. So we ask a few questions. Here when we ask the date of birth, we of course will just leave that empty if that caller doesn't know the full date of birth, month, date, year. We do ask if they're active military, and then final question is how are you related? So here you can see that this person is a coworker, and so this person is not considered family in this scenario, and we cannot provide a notification or any information to a non-family member. So the scripting is going to walk you through that process and give you the script that you'll be saying for that type of call. There's a button to click for if you are considered family or not considered family. And again, if you forget the definition that we're using, just hover over this question mark with your mouse and you'll get that definition to remind you. Okay, so the scripting knows that this person, once you've clicked, is not considered family. It will have you tell them that due to confidentiality, we cannot release information to non-family members. And we, of course, can just reassure them that we can let a family member know they did call and inquire, but we just can't provide any information. Now, for saving this record, you have to remember to always click Submit Info. By submitting the info, you'll save all that information that you just gathered. And then you'll know once it's saved because it will always open up this next question, is there anyone else you're concerned about? So here is that opportunity to look up another passenger for that caller. And usually that person will tell you from the beginning of the call if they're worried about more than one person. They may say my parents or my son and my daughter. So you'll know if there is another person that they are concerned about. But here's just a reminder to ask because we can only look up one passenger record at a time. Once you've confirmed there's no one else that you need to ask about for this caller, then you can close the pop-up window and you will have saved that record and documented who called. In that scenario, it was not a family member based on our definition, so we did not do any type of notification, but we still documented who called, and we still have a phone number to call back in case we ever need to, in case we don't hear from a family member. You'll notice that when you close that pop-up window, it's going to take you back here to that main search page where you first searched for Janet Ames, and there's a button underneath to hit New Call to start the next call. Here is our next scenario. This is when the caller provides a name, the name is on the list, and we are speaking with a family member. So you will go through that same process, collecting the caller's information, their name, their phone number. You're going to collect information that they know about the passenger, and then you're going to determine whether that caller is not considered family or if they are considered family. And you'll be given the type of notification based on what we've uploaded in the database. If we only had a preliminary list at this time, then we would be informing and notifying this family member that Gomez Adams held a reservation for flight 999 and let that person know that we're in the process of retrieving boarding documents to confirm who actually boarded the aircraft and that we will call back. Once we do have a confirmed passenger list, we'll be able to get the scripting that then confirms for the caller that Gomez Adams did board flight number 999 and letting that caller know that the aircraft was involved in an accident. That passenger status, that physical status of the passenger, once that becomes available, it will be uploaded as well into the database, so you'll have that for you and you'll have all of the information in the scripting. And you would be able to then notify this family member about that physical status of their loved one. In this scenario for Flight 999, we have reports from authorities at the scene that no survivors have been found. So when you provide that type of notification, it is difficult and there are a lot of steps to explain to the caller. Sometimes in the beginning they're very overwhelmed and it's important to take your time and explain these steps to that person. Don't overwhelm the caller. Take time to pause. You'll notice that there's breaks between each of these statements. We are providing information, but you'll just need to hear that caller and see where they're at and meet them where they're at to ensure that you're supporting them in that moment. Of course, it's a great idea to just ask if they're alone, if you could call someone to come be with them, and just always being warm and caring and giving that caller time to absorb this information, and of course, just explaining those next steps. This type of notification requires just being very compassionate and remembering that we do not use the term death. It's a legal or and a medical term. We use the verbiage that the first responders will be using, and they refer to survivors and those who did not survive. So we will not be pronouncing death. We'll be informing those family members that there are no survivors or your loved one is not among the survivors. Of course, again, you can always ask if that person's alone and if they want you to call someone for them. Maybe they want your help in telling some of their other family members. So again, these are some of those support roles that we take on as part of this extension of the airline. And these are just some best practices that we will be doing to support that caller, making sure that they know how to reach you and that you're here for continuous support and that you'll continue to provide updates as you get them, and really helping them understand those next steps. That Family Assistance Center is being set up and the NTSB will be there. And of course, we can help arrange for travel for that caller and their family members when they're ready and if they want to travel there. Most family members do travel to that accident city, to that Family Assistance Center. We do not provide any advice as to whether they should travel to that accident city or not. We really let them decide for themselves if they want to be there, and we can then just assist family members through that process. The airline does provide the transportation, all the lodging and meals. There are updates continuously throughout the days during this aviation disaster, and those who stay home still have access to a secure conference call so that they can get those daily briefings. There is a memorial service that's held there for those victims of the aviation disaster. And again, just supporting that caller and those family members through this difficult time, remembering to make note of when we need to call someone back, and always following through with what we say we're going to do. Another type of call that you'll receive are in regard to crew members. Now, airlines typically handle their own crew calls, so that is something that we will just document in our system. That way, the airlines themselves can handle those calls. You are still going to collect some information, but there's actually a tab that is called Caller is Calling About Crew. And you would click that radio button, and this is exactly what you would see. You would see some script to let you know what you should be asking for. And then here is a little box where you can type the answers. So you actually type in this box, and you'll want to make sure you get that crew member's name, that crew member's position, and then who's calling, that contact name, and their relationship to the crew member, as well as their phone number. And when you save and end this call, that'll route this information to our command center so that we can relay this information to the airline. Now, once you've provided a notification to a family member, typically what will happen is you will be the specialist who's assigned to work with that passenger's family. And once you've been assigned, that counselor who spoke to the closest relative is going to come up in a report, and then we will assign them as the call center specialist. To know that you've been assigned to work with a family or a passenger's family, you'll get an instant message on your INDIMS in our database. The instant messenger looks like this. It's at the top of your screen. It would pop up with a message, and it would just be letting you know that you can check under My Clients for details of who you've been assigned to work with. So under client management, at the bottom is an option for my clients. And then if you are assigned to anyone, you'll see that passenger's name there, and you'll be able to start working with all the individuals that are listed in the contact box. So the profile for the passenger, once opened, you can view the contact box that has all the people who've called in so far. And once you are assigned to work with a family member, you no longer need to be in scripting. Those calls aren't scripted. You would be making all your future calls through client management and then the option called Manage Client Lists Advanced. So this is where you can search for, under our incident and our event, you can click the passenger radio button and put that passenger's last name or even just type in their initial of their last name and do a search. That search will show you the names of passengers that meet your criteria for your search, and you'll be able to click on that passenger. You'll also notice that when someone has been assigned to work with a family, at the top of the passenger information page, right above the passenger's first name and last name, you'll see it'll tell you assigned to the call center specialist, Andrea Chiroff. And right here is her extension. So if you are getting a call and you're still in the scripting and you're taking a call and you enter an information, you'll be able to know who is the call center specialist that's been assigned to work with this family member, if one has already been assigned. You, of course, can still take the call and conduct the notifications if it's a family member and save that information, but you'll also be able to provide them with the call center specialist extension so that they can call them directly if they would like to, or you can also offer to make sure they know that you're going to also inform this counselor that a new family member has called. Here is just a view of those contacts under the passenger information tab. And here when you're in this pop-up of the passenger information on the right, here are all those contacts who have called so far. And if you want to view one, you just click the blue hyperlink and you'll go into that profile. So just to kind of wrap up again, that most families do elect to fly to that accident site city. Some may not want to travel by plane. Some may not want to travel on the affected airline, and that's okay. There's other forms of transportations that we can provide for them. Most family members on average want 4 to 6 people with them. And again, this is that part where family members choose for themselves who they want to fly with them. Most family members have reasonable expectations of how many people they want to fly there. Some families can be quite large and have an extensive family. So in that case, we would just document that and make sure we understand who are those family members that they want there. And we would then be able to share that with the airline so they can approve that. Family members may want a priest or a rabbi there. They may need their nanny with them. So we do allow family members to decide who they want to travel to that family assistance center. Another thing that's part of what we assist and support family members to do are just making phone calls and helping them make some difficult phone calls. One of those is when there's forensic information to help those authorities at the scene, things like dental records or medical records that could help for those authorities at the scene. And we, of course, can help make some of those difficult calls and explain the urgency on behalf of that family member. Also, airlines, they do make every attempt to facilitate families' ability to travel. So if there's things like pet care, child care, elder care, things that family members are concerned about, this, of course, we listen to and will help assist them and support them through that process as well. By the end of day one and into day two sometimes, we will have, at this point, usually been able to note which family members are traveling to the Family Assistance Center, and those travel requests will be submitted for processing. Uh, our, our specialists are not doing the actual reservations themselves. They're putting together the requests, and we then send that to a department that will put together the itineraries. And once there's an itinerary for a family that you're working with, you'll be able to get that and then confirm with the family what the itinerary is and ensure that that's something that they want to book. And then we'll take care of that for them as well. The call center does remain operational to support non-traveling families. So this can be 2 to 10 or more days. The airline will determine how long they want to keep the call center activated. And during that time, we'll continue to have our counselors taking calls and supporting those family members and loved ones who need support, or just also maybe they didn't get to go to the Family Assistance Center for whatever reason, but they still want to check in and get information. The airlines also continue to try to support family members even once they return. So they'll often offer grief resources and other phone numbers that may be helpful for family members who have experienced loss. And that is the conclusion of our aviation disaster portion of our training. Thank you so much for your participation.